We did it. She's alive.
What you're looking at is a Lamborghini Huracán that spent more time underwater than most scuba divers. A car the insurance company called unsalvageable. A mechanical graveyard that should have been parted out and forgotten. But when I opened the door for the first time, something inside made me freeze. And that's when I realized this project was going to be far more complicated than I ever imagined. Today, I'm going to show you how I took a flood-damaged supercar and brought it back to showroom perfection. But first, let me show you what I was really dealing with. When the car arrived, I expected the usual flood car horrors. Ruined upholstery, mildew, the smell that says something died here. But this was different. The moment I cracked the door open, a wave of air hit me that smelled like a swamp. A wet rug and a hurricane all had a family reunion inside this cabin. The carpets were soaked, the electronics were unresponsive. Even the steering wheel had a thin layer of something I still can't identify. And honestly, I'm not sure I want to. But here's the twist. The exterior looked almost perfect. No dents, no scratches, nothing that screamed total loss. This is the trap with flood-damaged exotic cars. On the outside, they look like $1 million. On the inside, they look like they survived the apocalypse. And then came the first red flag. When I tried to move the driver's seat back, it didn't budge. Not a click, not a sound, just silence. If the seat motors were gone, what else was destroyed? That was the moment I realized this restoration wasn't going to be simple. It was going to be a battle. Before touching anything mechanical, I had to figure out just how deep the flood damage went. And trust me, this is when things got ugly. I lifted the carpet, and underneath, standing water. Not dampness, not moisture, standing water. A literal pond inside the cabin of a Lamborghini. If you ever want to feel fear, look at a supercar's wiring harness submerged in dirty floodwater. There are more electronics in this car than in some people's homes. And water? It's their worst enemy. I pulled out the first module. It was green, not painted green, corroded green, like it had been marinating in ocean water. My stomach dropped. Without working modules, the car wouldn't start, or shift, or show diagnostics, or even power on. But I didn't give up, because behind every problem is a solution, or at least a very expensive attempt at one. Before tearing the car apart, I needed data, so I connected a scanner directly to the onboard port. And guess what? Nothing. Dead. Completely unresponsive. At this point, most people would have walked away, listed the car for parts, and never looked back. But that's exactly why this story has a solution, because I didn't. I removed the entire interior, seats out, carpets out, panels off, wiring exposed like a surgical patient. It looked terrifying, but strangely, also promising. Why? Because most of the damage seemed localized. Not everything was destroyed, just the components that sat lowest in the flood line. And that meant one thing. This car was not dead. Not yet. The solution started with replacing every module that touched water. A painful process, not technically but financially, but necessary. Still, even after replacing the electronics, the biggest mystery remained. Would the engine even run? And this is where the story gets interesting. You don't just start a flood-damaged supercar engine. You inspect it, you scope it, you pray to the mechanical gods that nothing inside is rusted solid. I drained the oil, and the color told me everything I needed to know. It wasn't chocolate milkshake, it was clean, a huge relief. But flood damage can still hide in the intake, in the wiring leading to the engine bay, or even in the fuel system. So I kept digging. Air filters, soaked. Intake housing, thankfully dry. Fuel pump, salvageable. coils and plugs replaceable. Slowly, piece by piece, the engine looked more and more like it had survived the storm with pride. So we put in a fresh battery, fresh oil, fresh plugs, and then the moment of truth. I pressed the ignition button, click, silence. Again, click, still nothing. My heart sank. But the reason was actually hilariously simple. One of the new modules wasn't coded yet. A flood-damaged supercar refusing to start because of software, not hardware. Once the module was coded, I pressed the ignition button again. This time, the gauges lit up like a Christmas tree. Every warning light, every alert, every possible car health issue screaming at me simultaneously. Honestly, it looked like the car was begging for medical attention. But then, a second later, the engine roared to life. And not weak, not coughing, not choking. A clean, strong, confident idle.
We did it. She's alive.
Because now came the biggest challenge of all, making it look and feel like it just rolled off the showroom floor. A mechanical resurrection is great, but a supercar deserves beauty, perfection. I replaced the ruined carpets with factory-matched new ones, rebuilt the seats from the frame up, scrubbed every inch of wiring, detailed the cabin until it smelled like fresh leather instead of swamp creature. Then came the exterior. Even though the body panels looked good, floodwater can leave microscopic residue in places you'd never imagine. So I pulled the wheels, polished the brakes, reconditioned the suspension components, restored the undercarriage, and corrected the paint until it looked like it was dipped in black glass. By the time I stepped back, the transformation was unreal. This wasn't a flood-damaged disaster anymore. This was a supercar reborn. But was it? I brought the car into a professional studio. Bright white lights, pristine floor, the kind of place where new cars are photographed before being shown to the world. I parked it in the center, turned off the engine, and walked away to see it the way a stranger would. And in that moment, I realized something. If you didn't know this car's past, you would never guess. No signs of damage, no hints of corrosion, nothing that said, this car once drowned. It was the exact vision I had from the beginning. So, what did restoring a flood-damaged Lamborghini teach me? Simple. Sometimes the most beautiful transformations come from the biggest problems. Sometimes the projects everyone else walks away from are the ones worth fighting for. And sometimes a car that's been through hell deserves a chance to shine again. If you enjoyed this build, make sure to stick around, because the next project, let's just say it makes this one look easy.